Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight.
A hurricane survivor of Grand Bahama tells the terrifying tale of how he lost his wife in the storm.
His funeral home director is clearing up rumors about his chapel.
A top U.S. official responds to issues at the borders.
Our news is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle Joachim. Top of news tonight, recovery efforts continue throughout Grand Bahama. But those communities which took the brunt of the storm on the eastern end of the island have a long and difficult road ahead. Jerome Sawyer visited McLeanstown today. It's said to be one of the hardest hit areas in East Grand Bahama.
The sound of heavy machinery and cleanup is pretty much the only thing you hear in McLeanstown these days. This is the furthest point in East End Grand Bahama and by far one of the worst storm-ravaged communities here. With still many unaccounted for, it's easy to see why this is ground zero for Hurricane Dorian on the island. Philip Thomas Sr. ran a guided fishing tours business from here. You can find him most days trying to put the pieces of his life back together. While he rode out the storm at his home and survived, other family members weren't so lucky.
I have my oldest son and his 4 and his 3 grandkids. They were missing. They was unfortunate, but I tried to get them to come here and stay with me, but they choose not to, so.
And they were washed up in the storm?
Yes, sir.
His neighbor, Henry Carey, sought shelter in Freeport, but returned to a devastating loss.
Okay, I felt like a part of me was missing, you know. Yeah, it was like sad, you know, and seeing the devastation and stuff. It was like crazy. I didn't even know where I was, you know. So it made me feel depressed.
Yet there are signs of hope. Both men come almost daily to rebuild a step at a time, while crews from international groups like Community Organized Relief Effort CORE are also on the ground cleaning up.
All the stuff off the side of the road, all the stuff people are hauling out, and just as much as we can, with the permission of the property owners and with everything else that we can get out of here, because this stuff is in people's way. They need it moved so they can get back and start building their lives again.
But this progress and relative calm is quickly being threatened by looters. Thomas was one of many who told me the problem is real.
They asked us to evacuate, they're gonna protect us, but they offer no protection for us. None whatsoever, you know, which is sad. All this la 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 on the radio before the storm and after the storm, they taking weeks to move. You know, that's bad, man.
In every storm-ravaged community, there's always that one structure, that almost iconic picture that stands out in your mind, something that you can't forget. In McLeanstown, it is this cell tower, or what was once a cell tower, just a twisted mass of metal, destruction, debris everywhere. If that is a glimpse, if that is just a picture into the fury that was unleashed here, you would understand why McLeanstown is undoubtedly one of the hardest hit areas on this island. Reporting from East End Grand Bahama, I'm Jerome Sawyer for Our News.
All right, thanks, Jerome. Well, an Abaco woman who lost her 8-year-old son during Hurricane Dorian says she made the difficult decision to cremate her child after his body was transported to New Providence in a decomposed state. Jared Higgs has her story.
The past 3 weeks have been a nightmare for 31-year-old LaShawn McIntosh. Her 8-year-old son, Lachino Dean, died in the midst of Hurricane Dorian. She lost her home, her job, and had to move back to New Providence, where she says she's homeless.
Knowing that I had to bury my son in, I don't know where I start from here. That what bothers me. Like, I literally have to start all over again. That's what keep playing in my mind, like, Sean, how are you going to do it?
Little Chino, as he was affectionately called by family, was laid to rest on Saturday, but sadly, his body wasn't physically there. He was returned to New Providence in a decomposed state a little over a week ago. As a result, his mother had to make a difficult decision.
Actually, when I got the body, it was already rotten. The freezer in Abaco wasn't working, so I had to cremate him. You know, ain't a mother want to create their child off.
With the funeral behind her and help from relatives and friends running dry, McIntosh doesn't know where to turn. The mother of 3 says she feels abandoned by government, who she claims hasn't reached out to her personally. She says losing her son has had a massive emotional toll on her, and she isn't looking for any handouts.
Even if they'd have just come and say a little words of encouragement, I would have feel a little better, but not seeing anybody, that was rough.
McIntosh's plight highlights the immense challenges created by Hurricane Dorian's deadly passage. Government officials have long acknowledged that some families won't receive the bodies of their loved ones. McIntosh's boyfriend, 41-year-old Bronson Williams, insists that special support ought to be given to grieving families. He says only Anglican MP Gladys Hannah Martin has been around.
Ain't that all the time people looking for you to push your hand in your pocket and beg. Sometimes you have people just a word of encouragement, just a concern alone sometimes would make you feel better when you're going through the things you're going through. About. We ain't see not one MP, nothing, everything we had to do ourselves. We even ain't see our government official come to the church or nothing to say, well, look here, we just come to show our condolences.
The challenges are now layered for this displaced couple and thousands of other Abaconians. Neither Williams or McIntosh are confident about job hunting in Nassau, and McIntosh's daughters haven't been enrolled in school. They say their best bet is to leave the island and search for a better life elsewhere. Reporting for Our News, I am Jared Higgs.
As Iram Lewis was sworn in as Minister of State for Disaster Preparedness, Management and Reconstruction today, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis revealed restructuring will take place at the National Emergency Management Agency. Minnis also sought to defend the government's response in the wake of Dorian.
Yeah, we're restructuring them so they become even better than before.
Big changes to come at NEMA now that Central Grand Bahama MP Iram Lewis has been sworn in as Minister of State for Disaster Preparedness, Management and Reconstruction. Just after his swearing-in ceremony at Government House, the Prime Minister mentioned that changes would be coming to NEMA. Critics, including the opposition, have labeled the establishment of this new ministry as another layer of bureaucracy with another political head.
Who are the critics you talking about? Brave Davis? Yes, sir. Anyhow, next one.
Do you dispel the myth that this is another layer of bureaucracy?
No, this is not a layer of bureaucracy. In fact, this accelerates the process. That's the reason you have an authority. The authority is so that professional individuals who would know how to manage and make decisions and the best decisions.
NEMA and in turn the government has been criticized for its response in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, which tore apart communities on Grand Bahama and Abaco.
We were delayed in getting into Abaco because the storm unfortunately sat over Grand Bahama and the feeder bands were still over Abaco. As soon as the feeder bands had moved, the choppers from both Andros and Exuma were able to be dispatched immediately. So you couldn't do it any faster than that.
Just after he took his oath, with his wife by his side, Lewis too was questioned by reporters about his plans in this new role and what would be the difference between the work of this ministry and NEMA.
This ministry will operate as an authority, like the hospital authority, and of course legislation is now being drafted. And once that is done and tabled in the House of Assembly, then it will come into effect. It's not a matter of being different from NEMA. NEMA is going to be a part of this ministry. So NEMA comes under a bigger umbrella right now. So NEMA will play a very critical role in the operation of this ministry.
Lewis was also asked to clear up a statement he made on Sunday regarding the temporary location of displaced residents of Abaco. He said a plan is currently being worked out.
They're going to be exposed to a lot of dangerous chemicals. We don't know what's going to be in the ground, what's in the ground. So in order to keep people safe and also to allow us to do our work, it is paramount that we have the area clean. It's difficult to renovate a room with a person sleeping in the room. You have to get them out of the room in order to make it renovated faster.
Well, a Grand Bahama man is desperately seeking closure after he lost his wife during the killer storm. He says the sight of her floating body still haunts him at night. Jillian Gray reports.
Howard Armstrong, a survivor of Hurricane Dorian, rode out the monstrous storm in his home in Grand Bahama. He told how the rising sea levels and howling winds was terrifying, but he said the most horrific moment was when he lost his wife.
I was only out here for seconds. I come back inside, and when I come back inside here, my wife had already fallen off of here, and she's floating on her back with all of this surge and everything.
66-year-old Armstrong met his wife Lynn 30 years ago at a pub in Grand Bahama. The pair have been married for 20 years, and he described their home as paradise, a paradise that he says was ripped apart. Glass, sewage, and debris flew throughout the house at 80 miles per hour, and 21-foot waves pushed furniture throughout the house as if they were made of paper. The former fisherman said he lives with the horror of that deadly storm every day.
The aftermath, I understand, is the worst thing, and it hasn't hit me yet, maybe. I thought I was above it. I'm stronger, and I'm a man. I won't, do that. But yes, I'm crying like a baby in the morning, and, I'm having a lot of nightmares. The nightmares is the worst thing.
Armstrong survived by climbing into his fishing boat, which had been tangled in rope, mooring it into a secure position. When he returned to the ruins of his home in Grand Bahama, he recounted how heartbroken he was, not for the material possessions he'd lost, but for his wife, whose remains he's still trying to recover.
All of this doesn't mean anything to me anymore. I would just like my wife back. God bless you, Lynn. Yeah. And I hope we find her. I hope we find her. Alive? I don't think so. Not after that. God knows why he saved me and not my wife. I don't know why. So
Armstrong said they won't get closure if her remains aren't found.
We're wanting a closure on this, a death certificate. My wife has family in England and a lot of relatives there, older people that they're wanting to know what's going on. They're going to have a big service up there for her. And when I questioned, I saw a couple of MPs here and there, and I went up and questioned them. It's 7 years to get a death certificate.
Armstrong's children from a previous marriage have recently reconnected with him and set up a GoFundMe page to help him rebuild his life. Though he rode out many hurricanes in that home, Armstrong said after this killer storm, he's not sure he'll be returning.
Don't underestimate a hurricane. And, this hurricane was the devil himself. There's no doubt about that. I don't think I'm going back to my house. I will go there, but I'm not going to stay there. I don't think I could spend a night out there.
After a brief visit with his children, Armstrong plans to live in Grand Key with his friends. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jillian Gray.
A senior official from U.S. Customs and Border Protection is brushing off reports that it has become increasingly difficult for Bahamians, especially evacuees, to travel to the United States. CBP Public Affairs Liaison Officer Michael Silva says nothing has changed at pre-screening points, insisting such reports are urban legends. Jasmine Brown reports.
Despite various reports that Customs and Border Patrol official insists nothing has changed at the border.
First of all, our hearts and prayers are with the Bahamian people who have experienced this disastrous and horrific hurricane. We're there to support and assist and facilitate as needed. There's been a lot of misinformation and a lot of, I would call urban legends that are being spread.
Silva's response comes as the local and U.S. media reported that some Bahamians have been turned away by U.S. and Customs border agents at Lynden Pindling International Airport. Some of those who have been turned away have been asked to provide documents like proof of income, property ownership, utility bills, employer contact information, and proof of pre-purchased return flights. The request has led some to believe there are more stringent measures in place post-Hurricane Dorian, but Silva insists the agency's requirements for Bahamian citizens have not changed.
Nothing's changed. The U.S. Embassy in Nassau is open for emergency visa appointments, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection at the port of entries are prepared should Bahamians request to temporarily relocate to the United States.
However, he did admit there has been confusion in the past few weeks.
If a Bahamian citizen traveling with a valid unexpired passport and a police certificate travels from a pre-clearance destination, a pre-clearance airport, they are allowed to travel to the United States with just a valid unexpired Bahamian passport and the police certificate. But if you travel by private vessel or private aircraft to the United States, you're required a valid passport and a valid unexpired visa.
Silva also explained that days after Dorian, the agency processed more than 1,500 Grand Bahama evacuees who arrived at West Palm Beach on a cruise ship. He said that system worked because the cruise line worked closely with U.S. officials and CBP to ensure it was a smooth process. Reporting for our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
All right, thanks, Jasmine. Still to come, a funeral director sets the record straight following a viral video. The details after this break.